Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today in this video we are going to make the Medal of Everlasting Life from the movie The Book of Life. To start off, we're going to use oven baked clay for this project. The first thing we're going to do is by getting an amount of clay that we need by using a square piece of wood to get the amount that we need, and we're going to use our knife to cut the amount of clay out. Next step is by loosen our clay so it can be flexible. After the clay is fully loose enough, we start by flattening it out on a piece of parchment paper, and we're going to take our ruler and start flattening out. After a minute or two of flattening out our clay with the roller, it will be looking like this. Next step, we're going to take our clay and put to the side and take our blueprint of the Medal of Everlasting Life and start using another piece of parchment paper to trace out each layer of the Medal of Everlasting Life, and we're also going to make sure that each layer is marked with number so we know which one goes where. After everything is traced, we're going to take our scissors and start cutting each of the layers out. After cutting the first 4 pieces of our trace of the image, we can now start by placing it on top of the surface of the clay. It'll be able to stick to the surface without moving. Next step, we're going to use our set of carving tools for this project, and we're going to select one of the carving tools to help carve each of the 4. We're also going to leave the parchment paper image on it so it can help as a guide to cut each and one of them out. I'm also cutting the 3 pieces away from each other so that way they won't be ruined or be in the way. What I'm doing also is being very careful of how I carve, and also taking my time by cutting each of the 4 pieces out so each one of them cannot be ruined. After cutting the first 4 pieces of what we need, they'll be looking like this. Our next step, we're going to take each of our pieces and start stacking them together to make sure it's all nice and perfect, by leaving also the parchment paper on them so they won't stick together. After putting all the pieces together, the final one will be the skull, and we really don't need the parchment paper on the skull, because what we're going to do with the skull is by taking the bottom part of our pen to start making the eyes. I put a little bit of force on it enough so we can start seeing the eyes. I make sure that when I use this method I do it carefully so the eyes can come out perfect. I use my carving tool once again to make sure that the nose comes out perfectly, and by looking at the result and making sure everything is perfect the way it's supposed to be, we can start putting it on top. After adjusting the skull and making sure each of the part is where it's supposed to be to make sure it's all perfect, we're going to put it in the oven for 250 degrees and set the time for 15 minutes. After it's done being in the oven, we can now take our pieces and start separating them. After they're separated, we can finally take our pieces of parchment paper off our pieces. After the parchment papers are removed, we're going to take our knife and start carving all the extra materials around our pieces. There are a lot of extra materials on the edge, so I took my time and patience to make sure each and every one of them is removed carefully and perfectly. After removing all the extra materials, we're going to take our carving tool once again and start by putting in all the details on the wings. Our next step now is to paint. The top part of the first layer will have a light green color, and this will take at least 2 or 3 coats of color to make sure it's nice and solid with the color. As the first one dries, we're going to go on to our second piece, and this time this one will be a dark green, and it will take the same amount of paint as the first one because it will take at least 2 or 3 layers of paint to color it. Next we go on to our third piece, and this time this one will be black. While the others are still drying, we're going to go to our first piece, and the bottom part will be gray. While all three are now in the middle of drying, we are now going to take dark purple and color in the eyes and the nose of our skull. After each of the pieces are fully painted, we can take our super glue and start putting them together. After making sure everything is adjusted before the glue is dried, we can now take our other piece and start gluing it together. Once everything is glued together, we can now go on to the next step and by making the ribbon. We're going to start by taking 3 pieces of ribbon and start putting them together by taking our design, and we're going to cut our design out and start making the ribbon how it's supposed to be. And after that, we are going to use green paint and start coloring the ribbon. After it's colored green, we're going to take our other color by using dark blue and coloring it in on each part of the ribbon to make our pattern. While the ribbon is drying, we're going to take our clear nail polish and use it to polish the first part, but we are not, however, going to use our nail polish to use it on the skull, since in the movie it does not shine. And since the first part on the front side is dried with the clear nail polish, we can now use the clear nail polish again for the back side. Our last 2 steps is by taking super glue again and place our ribbon on the back of our piece and place a heavy duty pin in the back as well so it can be wearable. And after everything is adjusted, our Medal of Everlasting Life is finally complete.